Good day, everyone. This is Dr. Soper here, and today I'll be discussing the 9th topic in our series of lessons on information privacy and security, with today's topic focusing on data interception and public key encryption. One of the easiest ways in which a malicious party can attack a network is simply by intercepting data while they are in transit over the network. The very nature and purpose of computer networks is to enable the transmission of information between nodes, and many possibilities exist through which messages can be captured or manipulated while in transit. Although there are many legitimate, non-malicious reasons for capturing or manipulating data in transit, security personnel must seek to protect the confidentiality and integrity of messages in transit by taking steps to prevent those messages from being captured or manipulated by malicious parties. An important first step in understanding data interception threats is to realize that the ease with which a message can be intercepted depends in part upon the medium that is used for transmission. Some methods of network communication are by their nature much more susceptible to eavesdropping than others. Consider, for example, wired versus wireless transmission of data. Wired networks rely upon a physical communications medium such as copper wire or optical fiber, and capturing or manipulating data on such networks therefore requires physical access, or at least close physical proximity, to the physical communications medium. By contrast, data that are transmitted wirelessly using methods such as Wi-Fi networks, infrared communication, microwave communication, satellite communication, and so forth, are much more exposed and can potentially be captured or manipulated without requiring access to physical network infrastructure. As a general rule, each method of transmitting information has both strengths and weaknesses from the perspective of information security. Conceptually speaking, malicious data interception can occur either when there is a lack of privacy or when there is a lack of authentication. When a lack of privacy exists on a network, there is a possibility that a message can be received by someone other than the message's intended recipient. This would be analogous to sending a postcard through the standard postal mail system. Since a postcard does not use an envelope, the message written on the postcard is exposed and can be easily read by anyone while the postcard is in transit. By contrast, when a lack of authentication exists on a network, there is a possibility that a message might be sent to the wrong recipient. Without verifying the identity of the recipient, there is no way of knowing with certainty that the person to whom the message is delivered is actually the intended recipient. Finally, it is important to understand that wiretapping can be either a passive activity or an active activity. Passive wiretapping is akin to eavesdropping on a conversation and involves capturing and analyzing messages while they are in transit. Although passive wiretapping might be used to maliciously snoop on the contents of a message, for example through the use of packet sniffing software, it can also be used to gather data on who is communicating with whom, for example by capturing the MAC addresses of the sender and receiver. As opposed to simply gathering and analyzing information, active wiretapping involves covertly modifying messages in transit or fabricating false messages. The purpose of active wiretapping is to gather more information or to effect different outcomes than what could otherwise be achieved through the use of passive wiretapping. Illicit data interception threatens both the confidentiality and the integrity of messages being transmitted over a network. With respect to confidentiality, it is important to understand that the confidentiality of messages traveling over a network can be compromised in many ways, including through message misdelivery, message exposure, and through traffic flow analysis. Misdelivery can occur when a flaw in the network hardware or software causes a message to be routed to an unintended recipient. Messages can be exposed because they must commonly travel through many network links and devices while in transit to their final destinations, and this provides many opportunities for their contents to be examined by parties other than the intended recipient. Finally, examining network traffic flows reveals who is sending messages to whom. The ability to demonstrate, for example, that a suspected spy has been communicating with a foreign government might be of great value, even if the contents of the message cannot be read. In addition to threatening the confidentiality of a message, the integrity or correctness of a message traveling over a network may also be compromised in several ways, including through message falsification, message modification, or simply through noise or interference. With respect to falsification, a fabricated message that appears to be from a legitimate source may instruct the receiver to perform an erroneous or hazardous action. A similar threat exists with respect to the malicious modification of a message while it is in transit. Finally, messages that are transmitted through network connections are susceptible to both natural and artificial noise or interference, and such interference might delay or impede message delivery. The best way of defending against the possibility of messages being intercepted while they are in transit over a network is through the use of encryption. Encryption is the single most powerful and versatile tool that security personnel have available for securing data while they are traveling over a network. It is critical to understand that encryption does not prevent the act of messages being intercepted. Even if a message is encrypted, the message can still be intercepted by a malicious party while it is in transit. Encrypting the message, however, ensures that the message will be of little value to a malicious interceptor, since the intercepting party will be unable to read the contents of the message. Although the use of encryption can be extremely effective in protecting the confidentiality and integrity of messages being communicated over a network, metadata regarding the communication is typically not encrypted and may be of value to a malicious party. Modern networks rely upon addressing, and network addresses of the sender and receiver must therefore be publicly exposed in order to provide for proper message routing and delivery. This allows a malicious party to determine who is communicating with whom, even if the contents of the communication are encrypted and therefore unreadable. In the United States, for example, the U.S. Postal Service has, for many years, digitally photographed the sender and receiver addresses on each piece of mail so as to maintain a government record of who is writing to whom. More recently, it has been revealed that the U.S. National Security Agency, or NSA, has been capturing metadata relating to the telephone calls and email addresses of hundreds of millions of people throughout the world, with the goal being to construct a massive network which reveals not only who communicates with whom, but also how often those communications occur. Even if the contents of these communications are protected, such information can still be used to identify social and professional networks, terrorist activities, espionage activities, and so forth. Messages being sent over a network can be encrypted in several different ways, including link encryption, end-to-end encryption, or a combination of the two. Before describing these encryption methods, however, let's first consider an unprotected message traveling over a network. In a typical scenario, a message is transmitted from a sender to a receiver. These two parties are commonly separated by several hops, and the message must therefore travel through several intermediary network links and nodes before it can reach the receiver. If the message is unprotected, then its contents could be read or modified at any point while the message is in transit. Specifically, the message could be read or modified by wiretapping any of the communications links between the sender and the receiver, or by using appropriate malicious software or hardware at any of the nodes through which the message must pass while in transit. In contrast to sending messages in an unprotected manner, link encryption can be used to protect the contents of a message while it is in transit over a communications link. Link encryption is typically implemented using network hardware, such as via routers or circuit-level gateways. In link encryption, a message is encrypted just before it leaves a node on the network. Upon arriving at the next node, the message is unencrypted, modified or routed as necessary, and then encrypted again for transmission to the next node. In this model of network encryption, the contents of a message are protected while the message is traveling over each communications link, but the message is exposed and therefore susceptible to interception or modification at each intermediary node between the sender and the receiver. To prevent messages from being exposed at each node while in transit, the sender and receiver might adopt software which implements end-to-end encryption. In end-to-end encryption, software is used to encrypt a message at the highest layers of the network protocol stack. This means that the message is encrypted before it even reaches the network interface card on the sender's computing device. The message is therefore never exposed while in transit to the receiver, and is only decrypted after it has been received by the receiver's computing device. Whereas link encryption is typically implemented using network hardware, end-to-end encryption is typically implemented using software and is therefore usually much slower than link encryption. End-to-end encryption and link encryption can, of course, be combined if necessary to further strengthen the security of a transmission. In the modern era, high-quality symmetric key encryption algorithms, such as the AES algorithm, are commonly used to protect data while they are in transit over a network. Standard symmetric key encryption algorithms are very fast and very secure, and can therefore be used to establish an encrypted communications channel over a public network. Unfortunately, communicating with symmetric key-based encryption requires that the communicating parties be able to securely exchange an encryption key. Securely exchanging a key to enable symmetric key-based communication is by no means a trivial task, and has come to be known as the key exchange problem. As a basis for understanding the key exchange problem in secure network communications, let's consider a common situation in which a sender and a receiver do not know each other personally, but nevertheless want to exchange information securely over a network. An example of such a situation would be the need to establish secure communications for the purpose of conducting an online purchase. You will notice that a secure exchange of information can only be accomplished if the sender and the receiver are able to securely exchange an encryption key. Put another way, to establish an encrypted communications channel, an encryption key must first be exchanged over a secure channel. This creates a paradox, since creating a secure communications channel requires that the parties securely exchange an encryption key, but they cannot securely exchange an encryption key until they have established a secure communications channel. This situation is known as the key exchange problem. Since the initial communications between a sender and a receiver must take place over an unsecure channel, a way is needed through which the two parties can securely exchange a symmetric key over an unsecure channel. Fortunately, clever methods have been invented for solving this problem through the use of public key encryption. Recall that crypto systems can be broadly classified into two major categories: secret key crypto systems and public key crypto systems. Both secret key and public key crypto systems rely upon standardized and usually publicly available encryption algorithms. These algorithms are then personalized for each individual secure communications session through the selection and use of unique key values. Whereas a secret key or symmetric key crypto system uses the same key value to both encrypt and decrypt a message, a public key or asymmetric key crypto system uses one key to encrypt a message and a very different key to decrypt the message. A secret key crypto system is therefore analogous to a standard door lock, where the same key is used to both lock and unlock the door. By contrast, a public key crypto system would be analogous to a situation in which one key is required to lock a door, while a very different key would be required to unlock the door. Public key encryption was developed for the purpose of eliminating the problems that are associated with symmetric key encryption, such as key distribution and exchange, the need to maintain a separate key for each pair of parties that wish to communicate, and so forth. There are three major requirements that must be met in order for a public key encryption algorithm to be considered suitable for widespread use. First, it must be computationally easy to encipher and decipher a message given the appropriate key value. This requirement is well aligned with Claude Shannon's second criterion for good ciphers, which states that both cryptographic keys and encryption algorithms should be free from complexity. According to Shannon, an encryption algorithm should be able to encipher any plain text using any allowable key without the algorithm being too complex to understand. The second major requirement for public key encryption algorithms is that it must be computationally infeasible to derive the private key from the public key. In a public key crypto system, the public key is freely distributed to unknown parties. Since the integrity of a public key crypto system is predicated upon maintaining the secrecy of the private key, deriving the private key from the public key must be so computationally time-consuming that attempting to do so would not be seen by malicious parties as a worthwhile undertaking. The third major requirement for public key encryption algorithms is that it must be computationally infeasible to determine the private key using a plain text attack. Since unknown and potentially untrustworthy parties will commonly have access to both the plain text version of a message and a ciphertext version of a message that has been enciphered using the private key, it must be so computationally time-consuming for the unknown party to recover the private key through a plain text attack that there would be essentially no value in attempting such an attack. In a public key crypto system, each key is the functional inverse of the other key. This means that each key can decrypt messages that have been encrypted using the other key. A message that is encrypted using key number 1 can therefore be decrypted using key number 2, just as a message that has been encrypted using key number 2 can be decrypted using key number 1. Note that because of this reciprocal relationship, the choice of which of the two keys to label as the public key and which of the two keys to label as the private key is entirely arbitrary. Since each key in an asymmetric crypto system is only responsible for half of the encryption-decryption process, one of the two keys can be made public, providing that the secrecy of the other key is protected. This means that the public key can be sent over an unsecure network to anyone with whom we wish to communicate, since only our secret, private key will be able to decrypt messages that have been encrypted with the public key. In a public key crypto system, there are two encryption/decryption possibilities that exist for each matching pair of public and private keys. First, a plain text message can be encrypted using the private key and then decrypted using the public key. Alternatively, a plain text message can be encrypted using the public key and then decrypted using the private key. This means that a message that has been encrypted using the public key cannot be decrypted using the public key, just as a message that has been encrypted using the private key cannot be decrypted using the private key. In light of the usefulness of public key encryption, an obvious but nevertheless important question emerges. Namely, do we still need symmetric key-based crypto systems for secure network communications? The answer to this question is that we absolutely still need symmetric key crypto systems. To understand why, consider that symmetric crypto systems are typically at least 10,000 times faster than public key crypto systems. Public key encryption algorithms use slow exponentiation and rely upon computationally expensive multiplication and division operations. By contrast, symmetric encryption systems use extremely fast bit operations, such as bitwise addition, exclusive OR operations, and so forth. One of the most widely used public key encryption algorithms is known as the RSA algorithm. The initials RSA reflect the last names of the algorithm's inventors, Rivest, Shamir, and Edelman, who first described the algorithm in 1977. A few years later, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, or MIT, was granted a patent for the RSA algorithm. The algorithm was released into the public domain in September of 2000. The RSA algorithm is based upon the problem of factoring large integers in a finite field. Factoring large integers is a very time-consuming problem for which no shortcut is currently known. The public key in RSA-based encryption is derived by taking the product of two randomly chosen prime numbers. The private key is derived by simply computing the multiplicative inverse of the public key. Encryption in RSA is then achieved through exponentiation, such that the ciphertext is equal to the plain text raised to the power of e, where e is the public key. The plain text can be recovered simply by raising the ciphertext to the power of d, where d is the private key. How can public key encryption be used to solve the key exchange problem so that two parties can establish a secure communications channel which relies upon symmetric key encryption? Let's consider two proposed solutions to this problem. In the first proposed solution, the key exchange process begins with the sender creating the symmetric key. Next, the sender contacts the receiver and requests that the receiver send his public key over the unsecure network. The receiver, of course, retains his matching private key. Next, using the receiver's public key, the sender encrypts the symmetric key. The sender then transmits the encrypted symmetric key over the network to the receiver. The receiver then decrypts the symmetric key using his secret private key, after which the sender and the receiver are able to communicate securely using the symmetric key. Although this solution may seem very logical and effective, it does have one major flaw from a security perspective. Specifically, in this proposed solution, the receiver has no way of verifying that the symmetric key was actually sent by the sender. In the second proposed solution, the key exchange process begins like before, with the sender creating the symmetric key. The sender then transmits her public key to the receiver and requests that the receiver send his public key. Both the sender and the receiver, of course, retain their respective matching private keys. Next, the sender encrypts the symmetric key using her private key, after which she encrypts the resulting ciphertext with the receiver's public key. The sender then transmits the doubly encrypted symmetric key to the receiver. Upon arrival, the receiver decrypts the first layer of encryption using his private key, after which he decrypts the symmetric key using the sender's public key. Note that this authenticates the sender because only the sender's private key could have produced a message that can be decrypted with her public key. The sender and receiver can then communicate using the symmetric key. This second method is indeed a good solution to the key exchange problem, and therefore forms the basis of virtually all secure communications among unacquainted parties over the Internet. When considering the value of public key versus symmetric key encryption, remember that both types of encryption are required in order to establish efficient, secure network communications among unacquainted parties. The primary practical difference between these two types of encryption is that public key encryption is much slower than symmetric key encryption. For this reason, public key encryption is generally used only for specialized, infrequent tasks such as symmetric key exchange, digital certificates, and so forth. Symmetric key encryption, which relies upon efficient and secure algorithms such as AES, remains the real workhorse of secure network communications. Well, my friends, thus ends our overview of data interception and public key encryption. I hope that you learned something interesting in this lesson, and until next time, have a great day.